It was a calm Saturday night when everything seemed to be going well. The sun was going down behind our garden, trees in Charlotte and a golden hue bathed the living room. As I lit the last of the candles for the dinner party, my husband Daniel was finishing up the drinks while I set the table. We were expecting only close family that night, including his younger brother Ryan, who had recently returned to the States after spending 5 years overseas for work. Ryan was the kind of person who made an impression. Instantly, he had Daniel's sharp jawline and confident presence, but there was something a little more playful in the way he carried himself. I remember meeting him for the first time at our wedding 10 years ago. He was only 20, then full of energy and charm. Over the years, we stayed in touch, but distance and life kept our interactions minimal. This night was special because Daniel hadn't seen Ryan in almost 2 years. They were close growing up, almost inseparable, and it meant the world to Daniel to have his brother back home. I could see it in his eyes as he prepared Ryan's favorite cocktail, even down to the brand of bourbon. Ryan once mentioned offhand the guests arrived slowly, and soon the house was full of laughter, music, and conversation. Ryan showed up fashionably late as always, with his signature grin and a bouquet of lees. For me, he said, for being the most gracious host in North Carolina. I laughed it off and thanked him, trying not to read too much into his compliments. That was just Ryan charming, smoothing effortlessly. Likeable dinner went smoothly. Daniel sat between his sister Claire and Ryan, catching up on everything from their childhood memories to current job news. I mostly listened, smiling at how easily the brothers slipped back into their old rhythm. I had almost forgotten how animated Daniel became when he was around Ryan. It made me happy this was family. As the night wore on, the guests began to leave. Claire had a long drive, and Daniel excused himself early to rest. He had worked overtime the entire week and looked drained by the end of the night. I offered to clean up, but Ryan stayed behind and insisted on helping. We moved in sync as we cleared the dishes, shared small talk, and joked about who had the worst dishwashing technique. Then, as I reached for a towel to dry a plate, I noticed Ryan watching me, his gaze more intense than casual. "You've always been good at this," he said softly. "At doing dishes," I teased, trying to lighten the sudden shift in the mood. "No," he said, still holding that serious look at making people feel at home, at ease. "You've always had this warmth." I laughed nervously and turned back toward the sink. "Well, I try." He was quiet for a moment, then said something that made me pause. "Mid-scrub, Sarah, there's something I've wanted to say for a long time. I just never had the chance, or maybe I never had the courage." I put the dish down slowly. "What is it?" He leaned against the counter, exhaled, and then said, "I've had feelings for you since the first time we met." The words hit me like a wave, and I looked at him, not sure if I heard him right. Ryan didn't look away as I spoke. "I know it's wrong because you're married to my brother, but I can't keep pretending that I don't feel something every time I see you, and I think part of you might feel it too." My heart was racing. It wasn't that I hadn't noticed Ryan's attention over the years, the way he smiled a second longer than necessary, the compliments that sometimes seemed too personal, but I always brushed them off because he was family. Ryan is Daniel's brother. "That's not fair," I finally said, trying to keep my cool. "You can't just say that. I love Daniel. I know he's your brother, and I'm not asking for anything." Ryan quickly told me, "I just needed to be honest. I've been holding this in for so long, and seeing you again brought it all back." I took a moment to gather my thoughts and sat down at the kitchen table. "I care about you, Ryan," Ryan said, as he followed but kept his distance. "But not in that way," I told him. "What you're feeling could be nostalgia, admiration, or something else, but acting on it, or even just being interested in it, would hurt everyone." He nodded and looked down at his hands. "I'm sorry I made things awkward. I just thought you should know." We were silent for a moment, and then I stood up and said, "Let's just forget this happened for Daniel's sake and for all of us." Ryan gave another, more serious nod and said, "Yeah, of course." The next few days were tough. Ryan didn't come by, and when Daniel asked if something had happened, I said, Ryan was probably just adjusting to being back home. I didn't want to come between them or burden Daniel with something that could break his heart weeks past. Eventually, Ryan returned to family dinners and things returned to a version of normal. He never brought up that night again, and I appreciated his discretion still. Every now and then, I'd catch him watching me a little too long, and I'd quickly look away. One afternoon, I got a call from Ryan. He wanted to meet for coffee. He said it was important, curious, and cautious. I agreed, but only at a public cafe downtown. We sat across from each other, and before I could ask what this was about, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "I'm leaving town," he said. "There's an opportunity in California. I need the distance. I need to move on. I thought about what you said, and you were right. It's time I stopped living in the past." I read the letter, which was heartfelt and sincere. He apologized again and thanked me for being kind, even when he wasn't sure he deserved it. "I'll always respect what you and Daniel have." He said he's lucky, and so am I to have known you. I smiled, tears welling up in my eyes. "Thank you for saying that and for understanding." We hugged goodbye, just a short, respectful embrace, and he left that evening when I told Daniel later that Ryan had taken a job offer in California. He was surprised but happy for his brother. He didn't ask why Ryan left so suddenly, and I didn't offer any explanation. Some truths I realized were better kept quiet for the sake of love, loyalty, and peace. Months later, Daniel and I went on a vacation to Charleston, trying to reconnect after a long stretch of work stress as we walked the cobbled streets and watched the waves roll onto the shore. I found myself grateful not just for my marriage, but for the strength to choose the right path. When temptation knocked, sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones no one ever knows about. And sometimes doing the right thing means letting go of what could have been for the sake of what already is. And in the end, I knew I made the right choice.